But we got news coming from all 7 days, I think, since the one I did on Friday. So let's talk. Long week. I don't know if that's exactly true that we have 7 days of content, but we're going pretty far back. What up, viewers? What up? What up? Today is Friday, July 17th, and that means it's time for a quick recap of the week video game news. Starting off last Sunday, which was the 12th, was the Ubisoft Forward. Ubisoft's E3 style event. You know, there's no E3 this year, so everyone's doing their own like small kind of press conferences, digital press conferences. And Ubisoft had theirs on Sunday. They talked about how a bunch of games that are coming out. They also said that there's going to be more Ubisoft Forwards in the future because they only talked about like a handful of games. And there's definitely more to be talked about. So let's jump right in. Starting off with some of the smaller stories. Brawlhalla, their Smash Bros. Alternative is coming to mobile. For all you mobile Smash Bros. Fans out there, if you want to play a Smash Bros. Like game on mobile, Brawlhalla is there for you. Actually, I think it comes out at the beginning of August or September. It comes out in the next month or so. They also talked about Elite Squad, which was like a stylized third-person shooter. I thought it was kind of funny that in the trailer, like they had Sam Fisher featured prominently. I think Ubisoft is now memed that there's never going to be an upcoming Splinter Cell game, and they just put Sam Fisher in literally every other video game that they make. So it's kind of funny that that was there. They also talked about their Battle Royale, Hyperscape. I always mix that up. Hyperscape. They just talked about how they have been on this journey for a while. They talked about the vision behind it. We met with the team a little bit. And so for the Battle Royale fans, they got a little bit more on the game that came out. But jumping right in, the big stories were they talked about Watch Dogs Legion. This was originally coming out in Q1, and then they had their big mix-up where they pushed everything out. They wanted to make sure that everything was more fleshed out. All of their games got a little bit more development time, just to make sure that they didn't fall into the same trap that they did with Ghost Recon Breakpoint, where all their games were kind of feeling samey. So they did that with Watch Dogs Legion. Now has last we saw it, like they had the whole recruiting mechanic, which was really cool. Like you would recruit certain people into your Watch Dogs crew. It was set in the UK, and you would kind of use your crew to like go out and do missions to kind of take down the oppressive, digital tyranny that the UK was in. They went through a lot of different ways to play. They had this one mansion that they kind of went through, and they went through it with a construction worker guy who like used a nail gun, and that's how he kind of like slowly worked his way through, a little bit more brute force, and he was a heavy hitter. They had like a stealth kind of like a techie person who like went through the whole things to get the information that they needed using drones. They had like a hitman type guy, looked pretty much like John Wick, but would go in and like super efficient killer man. And they just walked through a bunch of the different characters. Everything they did went down a little deeper. They also showed a really cool like movie that was done like a piece of content that was kind of inspired by Watch Dogs Legion, and I thought that was actually really cool to show that. Game's coming out in October 29th, so a lot sooner than we thought. When Ubisoft picked up its bags out of Q1 and moved all their titles out, we didn't know whether or not we were going to see any of these games even this year. Other than we had inklings that Assassin's Creed was going to come out this year, but we thought everything else was kind of pushed out way out. And now the game's launching at the end of October, so Q4 is starting to fill up. Speaking of filling up Q4, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it had a leak. The gameplay leaked last week, and there was like 30 minutes of gameplay that people were combing through, but they took their time talking about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. They talked about the mechanic, how there's the raiding and pillaging element where you would take supplies back to your camp and you would kind of like build up your fortress. I thought that was really cool and really bringing it in, bringing a new feature into the Assassin's Creed region or Assassin's Creed gameplay loop. They talked a little bit about mechanics like dual wielding. I think the character Eivor is meant to dual wield throughout the game, including dual wielding shields, which I think is going to be the way I play the game because I've always wanted to dual wield shields in RPG games. Even though I think it's slightly inefficient, but I think it's funny and that's how I would probably play it. But they showed the social stealth mechanic, which hadn't been in an Assassin's Creed in like 4 or 5 Assassin's Creed, I think. So that's cool that that's back. The during the actual combat, there is now a stun meter, which kind of feels like the reverse stamina meter. You slowly build up a stun meter, and then that's when you knock them down, and then you get your like micro cutscene killing move. They showed different types of enemies that you can fight, so they're really packing in more and more, showing that they're really iterating on previous Assassin's Creeds. And so this is a big improvement upon Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I didn't play Odyssey very much, but I played Origins, or all of Origins, so I really like the new direction of the Assassin's Creed games. I know that they don't quite, there's a lot of commentary about they don't quite feel like Assassin's Creed, tactile, one-hit kill Assassin's Creed games anymore, and that kind of frustrated me in Odyssey as well. But I am looking forward to playing this Assassin's Creed. I've kind of had every other Assassin's Creed that's been my journey for a while. So I'm excited to play this one. And then they ended it with Far Cry 6. I talked about Far Cry 6 last week, considering it leaked just before their Ubisoft Forward. It still looks as good. They didn't show any gameplay, but they showed like a really cool intro. And they just they set a date of February 18th of next year. So these are all the games that are coming out in this fiscal year, and it sounds like the ones that they didn't talk about that they're going to talk about later this year, those are going to probably be next fiscal year's titles. They didn't talk about Gods and Monsters. They didn't talk about Skull and Bones. They didn't talk about a Splinter Cell game, but like I said, I think they're memeing at us, and that's not coming up anytime soon. I feel like there's another game that we know about coming from them that they also didn't talk about, but I can't think of it right now. So, but yeah, they had a short, sweet, about an hour long, kind of direct style conversation with the consumers, and I thought it went really well, and I'm excited to see those games. Oh, I didn't mention Assassin's Creed's release date of 11/17, which is 2 days before Cyberpunk. So I think a lot of people are gonna pick Cyberpunk up before they pick up Assassin's Creed. And Ubisoft probably didn't have that date planned, or probably had that date planned before Cyberpunk got pushed back from September to November. So they kind of thought they were in an open window in a post-COD world, and then a big Cyberpunk just sits down right next to them. So hopefully they still, Assassin's Creed games will still do fine even with Cyberpunk right around the corner. Moving right along to other games, Ghost of Tsushima launched this week. This is the latest Sony exclusive title that since Last of Us 2. Ghost of Tsushima is about a samurai or Ronin. I don't want to get too technical here, but I feel like Ronin don't have a leader, but they still have like all the samurai stuff. Anyway, the game looks really cool. I've seen a couple I've seen some of the gameplay breakdowns where you can play one of 2 different ways, and each piece of gear you help kind of gives you more push towards one direction or the other. You can play like a stealthy, kind of like very scary, all about hit and run tactics and guerrilla warfare. And then there's the kind of more combat focused, heavily armored, defensive, tanky, damage dealing kind of build. And you can kind of mix and match if you want, go hybrid. I thought the game looks really good. The game looks beautiful, and I think that's what a lot of the reviews are saying about it. They say they don't know, some of the reviews I read said it's not really bringing anything new to the table, and sometimes the cutscenes or on quests feel like talking heads. There's not really a lot of emotion in each of the kind of scenes, and so maybe that's why it ended up with an 83 Metacritic, which is still good. If you're a fan, you know, you should probably pick it up. I don't think there's any cause for concern with an 83 Metacritic, but it's not, like I said, like I usually look at the 90 pluses as like games, regardless of what you like. You should probably pick this game up, and that's not where Ghost of Tsushima is landing. I might still pick it up eventually, but maybe not for the full $60. Game looks interesting, and maybe one day I'll play it, but as of now, probably not. Also launching this today, again, more evidence that Nintendo doesn't really care what other people are doing. Paper Mario Origami King launched today. We had seen last week, I think there was a direct, or a treehouse, I think, because I don't know how they name each of the things. Rather than calling them all Nintendo Directs, there's treehouses, there's indie or Nindy games, and then there's directs. Last week, I think there was a Nintendo Treehouse. They showed like 20-30 minutes of gameplay. I commented about that a little bit before, that the gameplay kind of interested me. I think the combat looks a little simplistic. I don't quite see the RPG elements in there. And when they're actually showcasing it, you know, everyone's in a complicated position here, but there was a lot of like mixed talk, and they didn't quite have their audio synced up, and there was people delayed, so it wasn't really quite the best showcase for their new game. But I don't think they hope for too much on a midsummer game, and maybe it gets the corona effect where every game that comes out now is just bigger because everyone's stuck at home playing video games. But yeah, I've heard good things about the Paper Mario series, or like any of the Mario RPG games, but I feel like the combat I've seen in this game isn't really going to be enticing enough for me. Maybe I'll borrow it from a friend, if you can ever borrow games from friends again. Moving right along, there was a Stadia Connect. I think if you blinked, you probably missed this one, but this week Stadia had a like 20-minute Connect, which is their version of a direct style thing. I don't think this was supposed to be like an E3 showcase. One of the big features they were trying to push in this was this kind of click to play, and it was, you know, if someone is playing a game on any of the streaming services, they would have a link in their description or a link that they could share out, and you could just click a button, and because you're a Stadia subscriber, you can just instantly start playing. I don't know what this really... I feel like this, again, Stadia is going for a really niche... I don't know who this is directed at. Like, you have to already be a Stadia subscriber. You have to be watching someone stream a game that is on Stadia, which is like, they only have a couple titles. They only have like, I don't know, 30 or 40 titles on Stadia. Well, maybe they have more. I don't want to put an exact number on it, but they only have like a handful of titles on Stadia. And so you have to be watching, you have to already be a subscriber. You have to be watching someone stream the game, and then you can click a button, and then you would instantly be able to like bring it up in your web browser, which I think is one of the best features of Stadia. I've played on Stadia a little bit, and I think that's, again, one of the better features. They also talked about games that are coming to Stadia. They had Sekiro, they had a few other ones. They really wanted to push the Sekiro onto people. Also, there was no like build up and anticipation leading up to the Connect, so I think they just kind of let it, kind of like cast it out there. Maybe they had a tweet that said, come to our YouTube at this time, and that's when the video would be, but there's no like live build up or anything. So I feel like you're getting a lot of mixed messages for how Stadia is doing, and I think that's why people are kind of starting to view, if not already for their kind of so-so wash or so-so launch, I'm starting to see less and less support coming forward if they're going to start throwing out like these kind of connects that are supposed to be direct conversations with the consumer, and they just kind of like put those up on YouTube and expect people to go find it. I don't know that that's the best marketing strategy. Today, in fact, we got news coming from today. During Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest stream this morning on Twitch, he had a hands-on demo with the PlayStation 5. It was pre-recorded. You can kind of tell because they like cut and jump to certain parts in that video, but It's pretty cool to see. He talked about it. He had both controllers. He had the PS5 DualSense and the DualShock PS4 Pro, and he kind of showed them side by side. You can see it's a little bit bigger, but he then started. After playing with it, he kind of, the one thing I really thought was interesting is he talked about the triggers on it and how developers, because there's so much technology in controllers, developers can kind of like, they can kind of like build a point where this is that the controller knows that this is a different button press, or at least that's how my mind registered it. There's so much more that they could do with the triggers. They can make it feel more, and that's when he actually got into gameplay. He started playing Astro's Playground, the next game, or the game that's going to come packaged with every PlayStation 5. And he showed the character kind of walking through sand, and he said he can feel the sand a little bit more. So like movement on terrain is going to be different, and it can give you a little bit more feedback. The sound design coming out of the controller is a lot better. Again, the triggers I thought was the really interesting part where, yeah, designers can design a trigger pull to feel different. So you can actually, I think the example that Jeff Keighley used was like, so you can actually like feel the tension as if you're pulling a bow, as opposed to like pulling a trigger, which is, you know, going to feel different. So those kind of like design elements coming to a controller I thought were really interesting. He talked about you blow on it if you wanted to like blow something off the screen, or which I didn't like even for the 3DS. I don't want to blow on my things, so that doesn't really mean much to me. But yeah, and then he just walked around Astro's Playground, which is going to come with every PlayStation 5, so we can all get hands on that very soon. He also talked to a marketing, their head of global marketing, and he talked about how bringing all the brands under one tagline. I think Greatness Awaits was one for the PS4. Power to the Players was one. Those are the ones that Jeff Keighley cited. But now they're all under the future of gaming. I think something future of gaming. So now there's one tagline for PlayStation, and it really shows that PlayStation is like a global brand and not localized. And I thought that was an interesting point too. Moving right along, people have noticed on the internet there's a new game coming from using and it's amazing what the internet can do. Using the UPC code or whatever it is for digital, using that code for digital, they found a game. They broke the code behind it and then saw that it was like an Activision alpha that was set sometime in Q4, like it had a date on it for sometime in Q4. It said the word alpha. The game's called Red Door, and all I think of is Paint It Black whenever I hear it. But yeah, people kind of pieced it together that maybe this is the new Call of Duty game. So the fact that we haven't seen anything about the new Call of Duty and we're already in the middle of July and we haven't seen the new Call of Duty game coming in November, I think the reason for that is twofold. One, Warzone is probably kicking a lot of ass and making a lot of money for them, so they don't really want to stop that train from rolling. And I think that they might take some time and you know, they don't necessarily need to rush out a new Call of Duty if the last one's making a lot of money, and they don't really need to reveal it until, you know, I think even if they have a 1-month campaign, Call of Duty is still going to be good, so they don't really need to rush anything out. So this kind of like internet, I hope there's something to this, like if they're kind of leaning in, or if someone's just really smart and figured out, you know, broke this code, then, you know, good on them. But I don't think Call of Duty really needs to do a big marketing push. People know when it's going to be. It's probably going to be in the first week of November, where it's always been. So people can just kind of plan for that, and they don't really need a huge marketing campaign necessarily paying billions of dollars to let people know. But you also got to get the family members who are going to buy it and put it under trees for people for Christmas. So you do have to inform the public eventually. I'm just saying you don't have to start doing it now, I guess is all I'm trying to say. Moving right along, Metacritic has taken a new step. I think I'm going to call it the Last of Us 2 effect. Metacritic user scores now have a delay to them. Yep. So because I think I think exclusively because The Last of Us 2 got review bombed so quickly after it launched. Like, impossible for you to have played a significant portion of the game and put your reviewer score up. They were already starting to review bomb it, and so Metacritic has now put, based on the fact that you currently can't post Ghost of Tsushima reviews, because their new time frame is you have to wait 36 hours after the game launches before you can post a review. Hopefully that gives you time to play it. I don't know that this is going to deter too many trolls, but if it deters enough, then it's a good measure. I'm surprised that it's taken this long to kind of put something in place. Steam's solution for review bombs was to only use recent reviews, like anybody who's reviewed it recently, and now I think there's 2 review scores on Steam, where there's like the most recent user score and there's the like at launch user score. I haven't been on the Steam store in a while, so I don't quite remember how it's been affected. But yeah, there's plenty of ways to deal with trolls review bombing your title, and Metacritic is now taking steps in the right direction to prevent. I think this also came from Sunday. There is a Lego NES coming out. Yes, so you can build a NES size controller and console and even a small TV in this new Lego set. So Nintendo and Lego are really partnering hard on this. The set is over 2,600 bricks. It costs $230. And I just think it looked really cool. Like, the TV has like a small crank on it, and you have your Mario Lego character, and he just kind of bounces around. It's very reminiscent of the first level of Super Mario Brothers. It even interacts with the Mario Lego sets that have been coming out that I've talked about a little bit, where like Mario, if you plug them into the top, the Mario Lego will, if you plug it into the top, will like react. So there is some kind of electronic signal to the system, but everything I think is to scale. And there's even like there's going to be Lego cartridges that you can like blow in. They show someone blowing into it, that you can put into the console. So it's all somewhat like mechanically works. So yeah, I think this is super interesting. $230 is very steep, but again, this is Lego. Lego bricks have cost a lot for a long time, so it's not really outrageous for a $230 Lego set. So I'm interested in this. I wonder how that would look on a shelf, because everything looks really big. So it might just like take up an entire shelf, but it's interesting, and I think it looks interesting enough to potentially put on my shelf. So let me know what you think of it down below in the comments. Saw a cool video this week, just kind of moving. This is a little bit more gaming peripheral, but for those DC fans out there, Henry Cavill put together a PC build. There's a 5-minute video. I'll have it linked down below in the description. I'm a huge Superman fan. I recently built my own PC, so I appreciated it a lot more. It kind of just shows it's like an Instagram story, and he just kind of walks through his PC building process. The one thing I noticed was like he's standing in front of a window, and you can just see like cuts where he just like giant jumps in time. My PC build took me like a couple weeks, because I was sending parts back and forth, and even when I had it in my hands, like the first time where I was just plugging everything in, it took me like 8 hours. It was quite the task. I have witnessed someone building a PC once before, and then me and Angela built my most recent PC together, and we were reading through the manual, making sure that everything's all based on what the motherboard can do. But I really enjoyed it. He even had a moment where he put in his water cooler, and it was upside down. I don't know if that's because there was no way to have known, or if like it was just a simple mistake. But he puts it in wrong, and then he cuts back to it where it's like, what the heck, this thing's upside down. And then he cuts to wiping off the oh god, the gluey stuff, the like paste, the thermal paste that goes between a cooler and a CPU. He was wiping that down. with like an alcohol wipe and getting all that stuff off, and then reapplying it in the correct orientation. I saw the NZXT building pieces that he had. I couldn't quite identify the case that he had. But yeah, it was all very interesting, and I really appreciated it. So let me know what you think down below in the comments. For those of you who've been watching my stream, I've been playing a lot of Remnant from the Ashes lately. The recent DLC, Swamps of Chorus or something like that, they recently came out, turned it into a kind of like roguelike game where you pick up loot along the way. For those of you who don't know, Remnant from the Ashes is like a Dark Souls shooter. So you have like your third-person character perspective, but they have like guns, and there's different gun builds. You get a little bit more gear. There's RPG mechanics. But the bosses are super punishing, and you have your own stamina meter, and you're managing that while you're fighting bosses and waves of enemies. The next DLC, the next and final DLC, is coming out in the middle of August, which I pieced together as a full year since they launched last year in August. This one comes out on 8/20/2020. The game came out on 8/16, so this is kind of their 1 year final piece of DLC, and hopefully they're working on Remnant 2, because I think the game's amazing and I want more Remnant content, and I want it now. The next piece of DLC looks very interesting. It's kind of dark and rural. Most of the game is kind of set in these different worlds, and they have different biomes. You have a swamp, you have a desert, you have like a deconstructed Earth city. So it's all very interesting. And now this next DLC is going to be very rural. They've already started talking about the bosses. One of the bosses is just like a giant shield in a snowy area. So I wonder if that's also part of this new. So very interested to see this last piece of DLC. I'm very interested to give Perfect World and Gunfire Games a little bit more of my money, because I really like the game and I hope it continues to do well. Last but certainly not least, when I was thinking of the week, I couldn't talk about last week in video games without talking about the Devolver Digital. And when I was saying that I think there was something in this presentation from every day this week, this was last Saturday. Devolver Digital came out, and their E3 like showcase is always fun, and it's a big production, and it's very much a parody and reflection of the gaming industry. So I appreciate it a little bit more for that. They also have interspersed titles that they're talking about. I didn't know Devolver Digital was the ones behind Fall Guys, but they have a new party game coming out. That was one of the first things they announced, was Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout is coming out on August 4th. So just a couple weeks away. It's a fun party game. You can play with up to, I think it was like 50 or 64 people or something like that. So looking forward to that. They had already talked about Shadow Warrior 3, but they confirmed that it's coming out in 2020. Shadow Warrior 3 looks like it's first person. It's very frantic gameplay, and you're like a ninja, and you're beating up Oni. So it feels a lot like Doom, especially when like the main character like breaks off some pieces, like a horn, and like stabs a creature with it. So it definitely has that like kind of Doom vibe, but it's got this kind of Eastern the setting that makes it a little bit more interesting. Another game they talked about was Carrion. This is like the reverse horror game that I was interested in last year. It's the one title I think I remember from Devolver Digital last year. Was you start out as like a small kind of mass pretty much, and you're moving around this like science facility, and as you slowly kill more and more of the scientists, you become this bigger and bigger monster, which is where you get the reverse horror title. And it finally got a confirmed release date. It's coming out July 28th, so just a couple weeks from today, and I'm really interested to play this. Always looking for more games to play on my Switch, and this has the kind of like pixel arty art style is always something that I gravitate towards putting on my Switch, so interested to play that. And last for them, they had this really interesting thing. Like after they went through all of their titles and their big showcase, they kind of showcased this new game, I guess, which was called Devolver Expo Land. It was, I don't know if it was actually a game or if it was just like a virtual show space where you could move around in. But anyway, like it was after they'd gone through and showcased their half dozen or so titles, they had like this kind of 3D 3D area that you could explore in a, again, game or some kind of setting, where you can interact and run around this kind of show space, which I thought was a very interesting ploy. You know, their their presentations are always very much a parody and reflection of the games industry, but this is actually an interesting idea that I don't think I've seen very often. So I can imagine other people picking up on this and potentially doing other things like this. It would take some time to kind of bring all those development efforts together, but I could see things like that working in the future, especially in this kind of digital COVID world that we're living in. So check a look. Links will be down in the description below. Woo, that was a lot. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you do, follow, like, and subscribe to me on YouTube and Twitch so you can see more great content like this. I hope you have a super day. I hope you have a super week. And I hope you have a super day. Bye.